Hey class, welcome. Today we're going to talk about conformity. Super exciting. Look at all those asparagus all looking the same. Ugh, disgusting. Here's an example of conformity. Nazis. Did you know that those were Nazis? Good job. They were Nazis. They did Nazi things, and we don't like them. Real quick, if you're a Nazi, stop doing that. Okay. When you're doing the sports teams, that's conformity. You wear all the same colors, you sing all the same sports songs, you get your peanuts and cracker jacks, and you don't care if you ever get back. I think those are the lyrics. Uh, that is also an example of conformity. Are you a goth kid? That's also conformity. Nonconformity is a form of conformity. You are choosing to conform to a specific identity, which is not mainstream. So, what is conformity? Conformity is a change in a person's behavior or opinions as a result of real or imagined pressure from another person or group of people. So when you act and you either have that pressure from people in person or you're thinking about how people might judge you based off of how you act, that is conformity. For example, I could come to class with a shirt that's like torn up and like a t-shirt that says big ol' slut on it, but I probably won't because there's a way that I have seen other teachers dress. And most of them don't wear t-shirts. Most of them don't have, terms that are considered by some to be derogatory. So I have to behave in a way. Well, actually, I don't have to. That's the thing. I don't have to behave in these ways, but that imagined pressure is what affects my behavior. So, when we're talking about social learning and how we learn behaviors, part of it is because of that social pressure. We learn to do specific things by seeing how other people do them. So, if I hear that all of the professors have switched to PowerPoint, then even though I might hate doing PowerPoint, there's a part of me that goes, well, maybe I should be using PowerPoint, even though no one's ever complained, even though it's been going great, even though it's easier for me to not use PowerPoint. I have that feeling of maybe I'm doing something wrong. And that's part of how we learn behaviors by seeing what other people are doing and trying to behave like them. So I know that we've been stressed recently. So this is actually a mindfulness meditation technique that I want to show you guys. It's just a thing that you can do to help yourself relax. All you have to do is look at the line by itself on the left and the three lines on the right. Focus on them and then identify which line between A, B, and C is the same line as the line on the left. So breathe in, breathe out, focus on the lines, and let the lines just be there. Let the lines just exist. And try to see if you can identify which line is the same line or the same length as the line on the left. Now think of that letter, breathe in, breathe out. Don't you feel a little bit better? So when you do that, most people, obviously, say that the answer is B. Every so often, somebody will say a different letter, but that's kind of a sign that you're not as relaxed. So we can do this one more time. I'll show you the picture again, and I really want you to just really take your time, look at the image. Don't stare at the image, just look at the image and relax, right? You're feeling probably a little tense. I want you to relax. Okay, now deep breath in and deep breath out. And now, again, not staring, with a very soft focus, right? Relaxed eyes. Look at the three lines on the right, the one line on the left, and then pick the letter of the three on the right that matches the one on the left. This should be a lot easier this time, right? We're very relaxed, we're very calm, our heart rate is resting, right? Okay. Now think of that letter on your mind. Let it rest softly on the mind's eye. Repeat that letter over and over. Which of the three lines on the right is the same length as the line on the left? Okay. Wonderful. Repeat that letter. Good. 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 So obviously, now that you're relaxed, you can see very clearly that the correct line to choose was line A. Now, you know that the correct answer is C. You knew it, right? I'm sorry for goofing on you, but the correct answer is C. Now, the reason why you second guessed yourself, the reason why you probably looked back a couple slides, or put your fingers against the screen just to double check, is because of social conformity. There was part of your brain that was second guessing what was going on, because we feel the need to conform with the group, even if it goes 100% against what we know to be true. So when we look at all the terrible things that have happened in the world, for example, Nazi Germany, right? We can see that people felt this extreme pressure to go with what the group says. We never question things, or at least we very rarely do, especially if it's a norm that's been established from the time that you were born, right? So think of like something as simple as walking in an elevator. Everybody faces the door. Why do we face the door? Is there any safety reason or necessity for facing the door? You can face any part of the elevator that you want, right? So based off the fact that everyone else always faces the door, we feel the need to face the door. So this leads to something which is called groupthink, which is something that happens a lot in team meetings or group meetings. If you are involved in the corporate world, you've probably experienced this, where sometimes it is very hard to dissent or disagree with what the group is doing, even if everybody knows that it's the wrong thing. If you've ever seen an advertisement in which you were like, how did this get approved? Didn't anyone, like, for example, the Peloton ad, where the husband brings his wife an exercise bike, and everyone goes like, why would why would anybody think that that's an okay gift? Like, everyone would should be a little upset at the idea that, like, telling your wife like, hey, get in shape, is maybe just like a little bit offensive. But what might have happened is an example of groupthink, where what ends up happening is people don't feel like they can dissent against the group. In a functioning group, you should be able to say, no, I disagree. But for a variety of reasons, we might feel like we can't, right? Maybe it's you only have 30 minutes for the meeting, and the goal, and you're under a deadline, and you know that if you dissent, then you're going to push past that deadline, right? So sometimes it's a time pressure, sometimes it's authority, right? It's your supervisor's idea and they're in love with it. And you know that if you disagree with them, your job might be in danger, right? But a functioning group should allow for people to disagree so that bad ideas don't go through. So there are a few things that might lead to conformity. One, prestige and prevalence. Where's the information coming from? So if it's coming from a Harvard professor, then it's much harder to disagree with. Or when it comes to the prevalence of that information. I got into a disagreement with my friend recently who said that vitamin C can cure any virus. And I said, that is not how vitamin C works, because that's just not how it works. Now, vitamin C does affect your immune system, yes, but so if you don't have any vitamin C in your system, you will have a weakened immune system, but there's no additional effect of having more vitamin C. So you can't just like drink a whole bunch of orange juice one day and then be cured of your illness the next day. That's not how it works. But one of the issues is people say, well, I heard a doctor say it and everybody does it, right? So if everybody's doing it and doctors are saying it, then I'm not going to be the person who doesn't like have 17 vitamin C pills every hour. So the prestige of the information and the prevalence of that information is going to affect whether or not you conform with a specific behavior. Another issue is the unanimousness of a decision. So if you think about being a juror, right? In a lot of cases, you need unanimous consent. Now, if 11 people say that this person is guilty and you say that they are innocent, then first of all, good on you, right? We gotta stand up for what we believe in, but it's going to be very hard to feel like you've made the right decision because everyone else it has reached a level of unanimity, right? Now, there's also commitment to the decision. If you've already made a decision, then you're more likely to continue with that decision. The I can't think of a good example. I was gonna really should write these examples down before I start recording, but I'm just gonna leave this in so that you know that I'm a human being who makes mistakes. Oh, that would be an example of commitment, right? I've already committed to recording this, right? I have all these errors in it with my mouth saying bad things, not good. So the fact that I'm already committed to a specific course of action makes me more likely to commit to that behavior. There's also the idea of accountability. How accountable you are to other people or how accountable those people are to you is going to affect how likely you are to conform with specific things. So, if every week I have the dean of the program come into my classroom and watch 15 minutes of my class, and there are specific things that I'm expected to do as a teacher, then I'm more likely to do those things. If no one comes in and checks on what I do, then I can do basically whatever I want because there's no one who I am accountable to. There's also the idea of self esteem and security, right? people with lower self-esteem are more likely to conform to the group because they're basing their ideas of what needs to be done on other people, right? And also just the idea of safety. If I feel like not conforming could endanger me financially, emotionally, physically, right, then I'm more likely to conform with the group. So if you look at like hazing rituals in fraternities and sororities, right, you're putting yourself in danger, but all the other freshmen are doing it. So why wouldn't you do it? Age also plays a factor in conformity, right? It's much easier to get like a young kid to do something sometimes. Everyone who's a parent just went, nope, it is not. Shut up, Professor Thompson. But even worse, trying to get a teenager to do something, right? So you ask them like, hey, you want to eat breakfast? No, get out my room, mom. Our age, depending on the type of behavior that we're trying to get somebody to do, is going to affect how likely we are to conform with something. There are also the ideas of group dynamics, right? So are you hanging out with your friends, with complete strangers, right? The way that I act with my friends is different than the way that I act in public. When discussing conformity, we should talk about norms. Norms are essentially the rules that we have for a society. There are two types of norms: descriptive norms, which are the ideas of what most people do, and injunctive norms, which is what you should do, which is a very important distinction. I think the best example of this is the speed limit. A lot of people think that when you see the speed limit of 65, especially in California, that means don't go faster than 80 miles per hour. But legally, right, you are supposed to not exceed the speed limit. That's why it's a speed limit, not a speed suggestion. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Nobody drives at 65, especially if you're in the fast lane. If you're in the fast lane, sometimes you're driving 80 and people are like, why are you going so slow, right? So uh, the injunctive law is what you should do. The injunctive norm is you should not drive faster than 65. But what most people do is drive 70, 75, 80, and that is sometimes the behavior that we follow. So we're constantly dealing with this balance between descriptive and injunctive. What I should do versus what most people are doing. Oh no, Grandma fell. Oh, now this isn't your grandma. This is another person's grandma. So just imagine that you are walking down the street and you see across the street an old lady carrying a bag of groceries fall on the floor. Oh no. Are you going to help her? I'll let you think on that. At this point, you probably said, of course I would. I'm a good person. But are you? I mean, obviously, you are a good person. But the real question is, would you help? Would you? If you said yes, you have not been paying attention. We like to think of ourselves as very altruistic people, people who, no matter what the situation, will help people, right? You see somebody who needs money, you'll help them out. You see somebody needs directions, you'll help them out. Somebody drops their bag, you'll pick it up, right? We assume that in general, we will be the people who are going to help other people. But we don't always do that. There's something referred to as the bystander effect. or bystander apathy, which refers to the fact that the more people who are around us, the less likely we are to actually help. When you see an accident on the freeway, you should call 911, but we always assume that someone else is going to call, so we very rarely call, right? Now, that also relates to the idea of diffusion of responsibility. The more people there are, right, the less responsible we feel because we're like, well, somebody else is going to do it. Now, if we all think that, then it never happens, right? So in that awareness of learning social psychology, we need to understand that if an action needs to take place, everyone else is probably going to assume that someone else is going to do that. So we just need to be the person who does the action. So now you're stuck. Now you have to help people whenever they need help. You're welcome. We like to think of ourselves as very altruistic people, people who, no matter what the situation, will help people, right? You see somebody who needs money, you'll help them out. You see somebody needs directions, you'll help them out. Somebody drops their bag, you'll pick it up, right? We assume that in general, we will be the people who are going to help other people. But we don't always do that. There's something referred to as the bystander effect or bystander apathy, which refers to the fact that the more people who are around us, the less likely we are to actually help. When you see an accident on the freeway, you should call 911, but we always assume that someone else is going to call, so we very rarely call, right? Now, that also relates to the idea of diffusion of responsibility. The more people there are, right, the less responsible we feel because we're like, well, somebody else is going to do it. Now, if we all think that, then it never happens, right? So in that awareness of learning social psychology, we need to understand that if an action needs to take place, everyone else is probably going to assume that someone else is going to do that. So we just need to be the person who does the action. So now you're stuck. Now you have to help people whenever they need help. You're welcome. Another similar idea is what's referred to as pluralistic ignorance. And it's basically when everyone doesn't act. And because of that, everyone feels like they're weird for not acting. Let me give you an example. Okay, class, well, I just explained this complicated term. Does anyone have any questions? You sure I can't clarify anything for anyone? No one, no questions? You sure? Right? Now, I just explained a very complicated thing, but nobody is raising their hand with questions. Now, many people don't understand, but they refuse to raise their hands. And the reason is because no one else is raising their hands, right? Nobody wants to be the person who doesn't understand something, but we don't realize that other people don't understand. And other people are looking at us going, well, that person's not raising their hand, so I'm not going to raise my hand. So everybody's inaction makes other people also be inactive, which means we just stay ignorant. So if you want to be the hero of a classroom, always be the person who asks for extra examples from the teacher. People will very silently thank you. There are two big studies in social psychology that are related to the idea of conformity. One is Milgram's experiment, and the other is the case of Kitty Genovese. In Milgram's experiment, we were looking to see how the presence of an authority figure would affect your willingness to hurt another person. The answer should not surprise you. Uh, Authority figures make you likely to do things that you would say normally that you would never do. With Kitty Genovese, it's a very sad case of a person who was being stabbed by someone in New York and was screaming for help, and no one called because of diffusion of responsibility. So I'm not sure if you can click on these links. In case you can't, I will just make sure to give you those links so that you can access them yourself. It's been fun. We did it. See you guys in the next chapter.